All right. Again with our see, think, and wonder. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? What do you see here? What do you think about it? Could you imagine doing this? Do you know what he's doing? What questions do you have? Pause the video. Go back here. You can look at the little picture right here, small, and give me your see, your think, and your wonder. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video now. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? And here it is big. See, think, wonder. All right, so hopefully you paused the video long enough to do your see, think, wonder. So now let's get into like the notes section and the pictures. So what do you see here? I see a train, the side of a train. I see someone looking like they're getting on the train. I notice that this train doesn't look like a passenger train. It looks like a freight train. That means like the trains that they put like produce on or like goods, not necessarily the nice cars that you would sit in for a passenger car. And this is called riding the rails. So hundreds of thousands of men and women did this during the 1930s because they couldn't afford to pay for train passage. And so at the back of the trains, the front of the trains had the nice cars, and the back of the trains had the freight. And so they would sneak onto these trains. And if you got caught, you could be put in jail or fined or die because it's hecka dangerous. Most of the people that rode the rails were men and young men, so like teenage men and older men, but you definitely could find families and women doing this too. But the majority of the riding the rails really focuses on teenage boys and men. And part of that is because during the 1930s, because things were so hard for most families, a lot of the young boys, I'm talking, like, I don't know, 13 or old, between 13 and 18, um, felt that they'd be better off on their own, trying to feed themselves than be a burden on their family. And so they would pack a sack, maybe a blanket, and they would, strap it on their backs like this guy has here. And they would start moving around the United States looking for work. And sometimes it was to, feed themselves. Sometimes it was to send money back home to their moms and dads and little brothers and sisters. Um, some men not being able to provide for their family, like sent them into kind of a deep depression, and they left their families, which was really hard because then now the woman is, having to figure out how to take care of the family by herself. So lots of different reasons why people would do this. But again, a lot of it was younger men leaving their families so that they weren't a burden on them, or single men. And so here's just some more pictures. Again, these guys are actually getting onto a moving train, and it's hard to see in pictures because, it's still. But yeah, so this guy right there trying not to get caught. So they're up at the top, and this train is moving, and they run alongside of it and try to hop up in. This guy is got himself put underneath the train, trying to hide from the guys who come to check the trains to make sure there's no hidden passengers who are sneaking on without paying. And I mean, incredibly dangerous. Along the railroad tracks, you would see like encampments. So these, like, they're called hobo encampments. So sometimes you've heard of the word hobo or maybe vagabond. Those terms are often used to describe these men during the 1930s who rode the rails looking for work and camping out along the railroad tracks. And so this is a little camp of men. They were traveling together, again, kind of looking for work. And again, most of these encampments were young men. So like this young kid here, these two guys here, notice he's got like this little sack and a stick. Sometimes they figured out how to do like a backpack with like rope, but a lot of it was like a rucksack, which is kind of like a sack or a pillowcase with stuff in it and they tied it to the end of a stick, and they kind of, carried it on their side, and they would use that stick to make a tent. So the blanket, like they'd use the blanket and they'd stick the pole in between to make like a little tent for themselves. This one's a family who's riding the rails. And yeah, so for the notes part, again, the things that I already talked about, but here is it's visual for you. Young boys, teenagers especially chose to leave families. So like you guys, your age, would choose to leave their families to find work to help the family out and not be a burden. Um, Traveling across the country illegally, hopping on trains to get to places. They would just move from town to town looking for work. They became known as hobos or vagabonds. Um, on occasion, when there was like work nearby, they would, like I said, the camps near the railroad tracks would be called like hobo jungles. They'd be kind of like in the trees or bushes just outside the railroad tracks. Um, Trying to like get cover. And that's where we get that term hobo today. And we use it today really to talk about anyone that's homeless. But these specific homeless people were, riding the rails looking for work across the country. All right, we're almost done with the lecture. We have, I think, 3 more left. So I will see you on the next slide. Make sure you get the notes put into your note taker.